everybody. Welcome back to the Codex Station's review time. I am Sal, the Slab Guy, your host, and with me, as always, on this side is the Ric Flair of comics, coming to you from the Library of Comics down the basement. How you doing, Gary?
I'm doing fine, my friend. We are reviewing a book that I talked about, and you decided to investigate. So I appreciate you for having a little bit of faith in me. I love this book, and I am very happy to be able to talk about it.
All right, then. So, folks, what are we covering? We are covering Camelot 3000. This is a 12. Oh, he's got the whole trade paperback there.
It's hardback. This is a hardback, baby.
Oh, hardback. That's what she said. Boom.
And signed by the author. Ooh, Mike Barr.
Ooh, nice. Mike Barr. All right. Very good. Very good. All right. So let's go a little details here for us. I like I said, I am Sal, the Slab Guy, your host. You could always find me on YouTube under Sal's Comic Corner. Let me get that ticker up right there. There we go. And you can also find me on Instagram as the Slab Guy 77. And then Gary, why don't they tell them where they can find you at?
First little experiment. That's my skull. Do we know what that's from?
Yes, I do. That's Fast Times at Ridgemont High, my friend.
Little Jeff Spicoli for you.
Yep.
So, you can find me at every Wednesday at Comic Logic. I'm a proud owner of Comic Logic. Wednesday, I'm getting my fix. Yep, we're getting it right here in the vein. We're getting our comic fix. You can find me there. We're Loudoun County, Virginia's only comic book store. Please come see us. And you can also find me on Comic Character of the Day, where Sal and I contribute to that every day. I post the cover of the day. Sal's always there telling us if it's a good cover or it's not a good cover.
Of course.
Always says it's a good cover. He even goes out and buys the cover sometimes. So
sometimes I do. Sometimes they're just that worth it.
Yeah, they are. So you can find me there and under the name of Opie Taylor on that site. So I'm happy to be here, though. And today we are reviewing one of my favorite collected editions.
All right. And there is the Comic Character of the Day Facebook page. Go check it out. We'll throw that down. There we go. All right. So now that we've gotten the business out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about Camelot 3000. So let me give you the details first on this before we get into the this and that on there. The writer was Mike Barr. Penciler was Brian Bowen. The inker was Terry Austin. The colorist was, I want to say, Tatiana Wood. And the letter was, letter was John Costanza. Not related to Costanza from Seinfeld. Yeah.
That was George's uncle. Yeah.
That was George's uncle. Very good. And the editor, of course, was Len Wein.
Oh, classic man there.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. All right, Gary. So you were telling me about some little tidbits about this book that I don't know about. So why don't you hit me up with that?
All right. Since I'm the old man here, I remember when it came out, and I was buying it month to month. So this
you're only 5 years older than me. Okay, so that's
you want to trade those 5 years, baby?
No, I do not.
You want to add 5 and me subtract 5? Would you like to do that?
Sir.
Then don't tell me it's only 5 years. But we digress. So in December of '82, Camelot 3000 comes out, and the issues, Sal was showing you the single issues. You know, this, of course, beautiful hardback collected. So this book was sold only in specialty shops. It's the first comic that was designed to only be sold in specialty shops. And it is also the first comic that was a maxi-series. The first mini-series was a World of Krypton series that DC did about Superman's homeworld. But the first maxi-series was Camelot 3000, and it was printed on this high-quality Baxter paper, which made it look beautiful. It was also, because it was marketed just to the specialty shops, there was no Comics Code authority. So there was content in this book that they could have not done had it been a newsstand book, because the Comics Code would have nixed it. So all these things were going for it. Mike Barr had this idea, and he called it Pendragon. And it had bounced around to, there's a black and white magazine that was going to publish it, but he didn't know if that was the right format. He had introduced it at Marvel, and Marvel was interested, but it just didn't quite happen. And then he introduced it at DC and changed the name to Camelot 3000, and he got the go-ahead for it. And interestingly, they were the ones that decided they would put it out in this format. So he didn't have any say on what kind of format it was going to be. But when they did this, that allowed him to explore it, the more adult themes with it. And there was even at one point, there was speculation that pointed as a novel, but because there was no advance pay on it, he was like, later for that,
Yeah, yeah.
later for that,
So let
So,
me ask you really one quick question, just
mhm.
to give the explanation on a maxi series. What is a maxi series as opposed to a mini series?
Well,
Is there a difference? Yeah,
miniseries were traditionally 4 issues.
right.
So a maxi series was just beyond 4. Now, of
Okay,
course, a lot of the miniseries seem to be 5 issues, and I think that's because 5 is a sweet spot for a little collected trade edition. So I
right.
guess that's why. You may have more knowledge on that than I do, but it seems like most of them now are 5 issue series.
Yeah,
Sometimes 6, but in my mind, I think a maxi series in my mind would be anything really over 6. I think you know
I agree with you. I agree with you.
to
I
be
think anything over 6 nowadays. Yeah, you don't see really anything mini series wise under 3 issues or 3 issues. It's
right.
al- it's always 5 or 6, and that is the sweet spot. Very rarely do you see something that's actually 3 issues. Like Green Hell was only 3 issues, but
Right.
that was Black Label.
But it was
That's a
Black
little
Label.
that was
Yeah.
a little different story there, but still digressing again. Maxi
Eh,
series, anything would be on six issues in the series.
Right. So it was a new experimental format. It was also experimental that was only being sold in the shops and with the paper also. So
Mm-hmm.
this starts publishing, and the first issue that you have there is cover dated December of '82. This book
Correct.
does not wrap up until April. Great Brian Boland cover. This book does not wrap up till April of '85. And when Mike Barr was pitching this, I know that scene right there when Arthur is awakened. When this series was pitched, um, and they were picking artists, Mike Barr was really happy to get Boland, who was is a British
Mm-hmm.
artist, and he thought that would maybe that would give some good bona fides to doing a story on Britain's greatest hero. So
Mm-hmm.
he really liked how that was going to go. Now, because Boland was going to do the inking and he was going to do the penciling, that made it a more lengthy process. So Barr was pitching to DC, hey, let's get a nice stockpile in the can before we start putting them out there so we don't have delays. But
Right.
like companies are prone to do, oh no, let's publish it. And they started publishing it. So by the time they got about to issue 6, all of a sudden this book that was a monthly is like 3 issues late all the time. As
Yeah.
we get to issue 10, the space between 10 and 11 was 5 to 6 months. The
Right.
space between 11 and the final issue 12 was 10 or 11 months, is
Yep.
what I was remember, damn near a year. So
Right.
these delays are terrible. You know what makes the delays even worse? When the
Tell
story
me.
is that damn good.
And you're
And
there
it's,
itching for it.
oh yeah, you're
And
dying.
you're
I'm
there
like, come
itching.
on, man. We're like, we go to the shop. When's Camelot 12? And back then this was pre-internet and all the other stuff. So
Right.
you can't look it up and find out.
Right.
And he's like, have you heard anything? When's the 12th issue coming? And you're just waiting on pins and needles. I mean, the 6 month wait for 11 was brutal. And then you
Yeah.
got a damn near a year from 11 to 12. It's like,
For
oh
the
my
final
God,
issue. For the final
put
issue.
this,
Which is,
put this thing out.
right.
So ultimately, it was well worth the wait. You
Mm-hmm.
got to read it the way it should be read. You bought this
It's
set of 12 and you
right.
read them all. And considering that book was from the early '80s, there
Yep.
on that paper in your comics still holds up pretty well, right? Visually,
It does. It
like
does.
you
It
just
is
showed.
actually
You showed it, yeah,
mhm, right. It has held up very well. I mean, it's still got the good comic book smell too,
yeah,
but
yeah. Look,
but
look, look at that great picture of Merlin
yeah.
emerging at
Look,
Stonehenge.
there you go.
Yep. So the colors look good. Boland's art was phenomenal.
It was. I
Um,
loved it. It was
the
great.
story was great, fleshing out the characters. In the book, we'll find there are a little interesting tidbit. In the book, we have 6 knights that are with Arthur on his quest. Barr had 12. Brian Boland said, "Hey, mate, how about 6? It's a lot easier to draw 6 than 12, right?"
12. That's right.
So,
That's
my
right.
God, if he'd been drawing 12 nights in there, might have taken us 4 years to get the damn final issue out.
Oh, yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah,
That story would
so
have stretched out forever.
absolutely. So anyway, but Abar said, yeah, it was a good suggestion to get to the to the 6 nights instead of 4.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
but that's the production of it. I think it holds up well. I know you and I had talked off camera, and there's a very 80s feel to it
Right.
geopolitically.
Right. Right.
And that's and that's I think that's the only thing that's dated in it.
Yes.
I think the
Yeah.
rest of the story is
Well,
timeless.
yeah, yes, I agree with you. There's some other things that I felt was very 80s or during the 80s time frame in general, and I can go into that in a little bit more detail. But
Yep.
first, I want to give people a little bit of a spoiler, or not a little bit of a spoiler, but a little bit of a preview of what the story is. Okay,
Please do.
so it's, of course, we're talking about King Arthur, Camelot, the whole folklore behind that. He comes back when England needs him the most, but not only does England need him, but the entire planet needs him. We're being invaded by aliens, and England and the rest of the world need a leader to fight back this invading menace. So our main character Tom uncovers his tomb, and he awakens, and now he's realizing what's going on. It's the year 3000. We're being invaded by these aliens. It goes, "Oh, so I got to find my knights. I got to find my knights." And so they actually are reincarnated in different people and he has to actually seek them out. So he seeks out his knights. They form together and they take on this menace. I'm not going to give any more to that story because there's a whole lot more details that goes on inside that story that you need to read and find out for yourself. What do you think, Gary? Is that a good review of that? Is that a good summary?
I think that's a very good review. You
Yeah.
showed the great page where Tom has awakened Arthur from his tomb, and
Mhm.
Arthur gets quickly up to speed, saves Tom's life from the invaded. They're being invaded by aliens that are not very nice.
Yes.
They're not very nice.
Yep.
And so he saves Tom, and then immediately Arthur's first thought is Merlin. I need Merlin.
True.
So
That
they're
is
going
so
to get
true.
Merlin.
Merlin and Excalibur, of course.
Right, and Excalibur, and from there, and where Arthur has not been reincarnated, Arthur has just been reawakened.
Yes.
And not as a zombie or a rotting corpse, as a youthful vim and vigor.
Yes.
King Arthur at his prime. But the other knights have been reincarnated, their essence has been reincarnated, and he has to awaken them. And they are not all reincarnated as they were.
That's also correct. I didn't want to spoil that, but yes. So some are different than what they were, but the general premise is almost the same. Sir Lancelot, Guinevere,
the triangle. Yep.
That's your love triangle that goes on there. Absolutely. Some of the other 80s feel with the dialogue. I felt there was a lot of 80s feel to it. I also felt this, and I was getting this vibe from it. It was very, how do I say it, Cold War aspect.
Yes.
Like you felt the Cold War presence that was in the 80s in this book, in this whole series, even to the very end.
Yes.
Even to the very end. So what else did you think about that?
Well, I thought it very much was, and the director of the UN was a slimy little snake that has very big ties in Arthurian legend. I'm not going to spoil it. I mean, it's not a spoiler to say that the big bad that may be controlling the aliens might be a certain sorceress that Arthur is related to.
Of course.
So she's revealed in the first issue, so that's not giving away too much there, and you can't have a great Arthur story without Morgana. So
of course.
And so she, and her story is pretty interesting too.
Yep.
And she, one of the aspects she wants to wipe them out and is content to do so, but she's got a little medical malady going on herself.
That's true.
And when something happens where maybe we might have a quest for the Grail, she's like, stop the presses. let's let them find it.
Right.
So that's a little sidelight that happens. it's really interesting. I know we don't want to talk spoilers, but I think one thing we really have to talk about though is there were two knights that are really not as they were in
Let's
this
go ahead. Let's dive into those.
in this day and age. They are the aliens are transforming people into big, giant, mindless brutes. And when they get to Percival, who is where we get the word perseverance from, because in many legends, he's the one that ultimately finds the Grail, and that's where perseverance came from. So Percival is found as he's in this big vat of fluid, and he's about to be turned into a Neo-Man. And before they can safely extricate him, the process begins, and he turns into this big, mindless brute. But as we find out, Percival's mind is still there. He can't speak, but he has actions, and he is a Neo-Man now, but he's quite valuable to the team because he's with them, and he has all that brute force now. And even though he doesn't speak, he's quite eloquent in his actions and his deeds. And there's something that he does later on that is so important to the story.
Yes.
And I think very touching, very touching. He has people wanting him to do something different, and he does it. He goes with his heart and his mind, and you know, he to quote another movie, he chooses wisely.
Very true.
See
well,
what I did there?
I see what you did there. Very good. He's very not unlike his character from the mythology or from the folklore. You know, the characters themselves, the knights, were pretty much dead on accurate for what they were. You know, from the
mythology.
That's mythology, mythos. Let's go with mythos because I like that word better. Okay.
Yep.
So I felt those characters were very well done and very well fleshed out too, and I did like the changes they had done to them as well.
And the other character, the knight that we should talk about, we'll give the name to, is Sir Tristan. So in the original Arthurian legend, Sir Tristan's a bit of a bastard, right? He's a womanizer. He's taken women against their will.
Right.
And he had a really hot-blooded relationship with Isolde, was his woman, and loves her. Well, Tristan has been reincarnated as a woman. And when Tristan is about to get married, and our protagonist, who's us, Tom, awakens him.
Yeah.
And Tristan is in this body that is foreign to him, and he's not happy about it, but he's going to do his duty. You know, first thing, he cuts his hair off, and he's got a very, a very, God, I don't think it's an insensitive word, but like a butch feel to,
Right. If you want to picture Grace Jones, Grace Jones.
Yep.
Haircut, that type of feel to you.
And the
suit, that's what I was
saying. And in this series, now this is very forward for its time. You couldn't have had this in a comics code book. You could not have had this. And this this is a trans, trans person. This is a transgender here.
Right.
And it was done not for shock value, but as an integral storyline. It was done very sensitively, and Tristan had to come with grips, it has to come to grips with, this new body and what he is. And our hero, our protagonist, Tom, actually has feelings for Tristan, who was formerly Amber. And Tristan is, Tristan goes off, says, what do you want me to do? Submit to let you touch this body, to do this, to do that? That is not what I am. I am a man. And so these feelings of conflict. And then at some point, Isolde is introduced, and that's a whole nother layer. Tristan wants to hold Isolde in his arms, but they're not his arms. It's her arms. He's a female. So this is not the love affair, the hot, steamy love affair that he bargained for. So I thought that whole subject matter was handled so sensitively and sensibly, and it was you didn't have anything like this in comics at the time. You
Right,
know,
right.
maybe some of
Yeah,
the underground stuff, that I
maybe
wasn't
so.
familiar with. But
Maybe
in
so.
mainstream comics, you did not have this.
Right, right. I believe I have to agree with you. I believe that portion of the story very well written, and the fact that what Tristan was, what type of person he was, to become a woman was very you know I don't know how to say it, shocking to him.
Enlightening, enlightening. Yeah,
Lightning to him.
shocking.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So I felt like they progressed that storyline or that subplot in a very well played manner. I really do. So, yep.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it was very, very, very well done, and there were temptations for
Hmm.
Tristan,
Hmm.
to maybe alter this predicament, and
Right.
that was played well. So quite an angle on this, and you got into honor, and you
Hmm.
got into duty, and
Right.
putting putting everyone else, your comrades, ahead of your feelings. So
Very true.
I thought it was very, very well done.
Very good. Very good. So, do we want to talk about towards the end of how that 80s feel also was coming through with the Cold War and a certain type of weapon? Was that kind of described at the end?
Well, no, you go ahead with that. I want to hear your take on that.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
So to me, what I felt like was with the 80s take and the Cold War, there was always the threat of nuclear war.
Yep.
So over the course of the storyline, King Arthur's realizing how far man has progressed in science and the splitting of the atom.
Yep.
It comes down to it. So towards the end, um, they don't really set off a nuke, but he can use Excalibur to split an atom. I'm
Yep.
not going to say any more of that. We'll leave it like that. But that was so classic 80s for me because that threat of nuclear war or, the Cold War was very prevalent in the 80s when I was growing up, 70s, 80s, and even to the 90s a little bit as well. But
Yep.
that was very prevalent during that time frame. And I felt that in that book right there.
And the world leaders of the various nations were portrayed in a pretty negative light.
They all were. They
They
all were very
all were
stereotyped, very much stereotyped.
very,
Like
but
the president of the United States was a cowboy
yep,
type of gun shooter, type of shoot first, ask questions later type of guy.
very
You know,
Reagan-esque,
yeah,
very
very Reagan-esque.
Reagan-esque, and
Very true.
the Soviet leader was very much a bear,
Yep,
of
yep,
a man, and
yep.
like I said, the slimy UN director that also
Yeah,
has ties to Arthurian legend was pretty well
right.
done. And interesting point about Excalibur also, where it can split the atom. There earlier in it, there is a scene where Arthur is saved by two of his knights, and one perishes, and our protagonist Tom is hurt in it.
Yes.
And before I'm sorry, I jumped the gun. Before that, there's a scene with Excalibur where perhaps there's a traitor in the mist, and Excalibur is going to one of the powers that Arthur is saying Excalibur has is that it will cleave truth from falsehood and will slay whoever holds it in lies. And
Right.
that is a very interesting and poignant
Hmm.
little nugget in there,
Right.
to find out that who does betray. How does Excalibur determine
Right.
this? And the power that Excalibur has is not quite what you think it is.
That's also true.
And
It's also true.
Arthur deployed that power very interestingly,
Yep.
and that's touching. And then that leads later on to this sacrifice,
Very,
and
very much.
and there's a scene where our protagonist that's taking the place of us, Tom, is in a hospital bed, very gravely ill, and there's a scene at his bedside that I remember when I was reading this in the 80s. I mean, it brought a tear to my eye. I thought it was so
Hmm.
touching, because Tom was us. Tom
Yeah.
was us. You
Tom
know.
was a regular guy. He was not anybody special. He was
Yep.
just a guy helping the archaeological dig, I believe, and
And
that was
fighting
it.
for his life. Yeah, fighting
And
for his
fighting for his
life.
life. Yep.
Yep. His parents had been killed, and he was fighting against the aliens, and he just happened to uncover Arthur at the dig. You
Yep.
know, I think he says here, I finally found, before he unearths Arthur, here I finally found something archaeologically worth,
Something. Yeah.
worth anything. And
Yeah.
then I'm about to get killed by aliens. I'm about to get
Yeah.
killed by the
Yep.
invaders.
Yep.
So,
Definitely.
I really, I just thought all in all, I loved I just thought it was a poignant tale. I thought these, you know, by not having 12 nights, you could really focus on the nights that we had, the ever spinning triangle and tragedy between Arthur, Guinevere, and Lancelot
Mhm.
that's
Yep.
still there. They just can't keep it in their pants, can they?
No, they cannot.
Can't keep
Nope.
it in their pants. But I wouldn't expect anything less.
Yeah,
That
true.
that has to be part of it. Mordred, I mean not Mordred, Merlin,
Merlin. Yeah.
a complete ass, right? Most of the time.
But
Speak,
that's how he's portrayed, though. I
that's how
mean,
he is, speaking
that's
in
how he
half
is.
truths and riddles, and
Yep.
never giving you the straight scoop. But
Yep.
and oh my, I really loved how Bolin drew him too.
Yes. Yep.
You know,
I got that one page in there with Merlin. Do I have
yep,
that still? Let me see if I can find that page really quick. I turn to it. There we go.
yeah, yeah. That's when that is just awesome, awesome Merlin,
Yep.
and Merlin. Just a little aside when I think when Lancelot has joined the fold and he remembers who he is and all,
Yeah.
Lancelot says mage, and Merlin says knight. that's how they that's how they greet one another.
That's how they address one another. Yep. Yep.
Not fans of one another.
Disdain, you might say.
Disdain. Yes, there
Yep.
was disdain. That is a perfect
Yep.
word for it. So, you know,
There was. Go ahead.
yeah, I just love the characterization, and I think they really kept to the archetypes
Yes.
of those
Yes.
nights. And by keeping the number down, I think you just got more characterization of each of them. And I just, if you're going to tell a good Arthur story, you have to have those knights in it. You have to have the triangle. You have to have Merlin. And I just thought it was a
I
really
agree.
cool thing where you got the mythos of Arthur and you got sci-fi. So
Yeah.
we
You have
hear
aliens invading. You got
we got the
aliens
aliens
invading.
exactly, and the Arthurian legend is, Arthur's going to return when England needs him most again, or needs
Mhm.
her most again. He'll return, and we don't ever see that. We see the retelling of the older versions of Arthur. That how many movies do they make about Arthur, or how many shows, or things? But we very rarely see Arthur when he comes back, which was
Yeah.
really interesting. Now, there was a recent comic, that was Arthur comes back and he's not so nice, and I can't remember the Once in Future. I think it was Once in Future that was out
I
a
don't
few
know.
years ago, and
Okay.
that was an Arthurian thing where Arthur's been kind of tainted and isn't the helpful Arthur we remember. but
Right.
but
The
but
noble
usually,
leader. Huh?
yeah, we don't see Arthur coming back. We don't see that aspect that has been foretold. So that's
Yeah.
what was kind of neat about Mike Barr having this story in his head that he's going to tell a story when Arthur does come back, and he's setting it in the future. So we got mythos,
Mhm.
legend, and sci-fi.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah. Aliens invading. Laser guns. The whole 9 yards.
the whole
Flying.
nine yards.
Flying crafts. The whole 9 yards there.
And beautiful art.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful art with it the whole way through. The whole way through. One thing I wanted to mention, you were talking about Merlin being a complete ass. I remember this one scene in there. He was like, Arthur was like yelling at him because it was like towards the end of the book, they just had a real big skirmish and they thought they were close to the end. And he was like, Merlin, why aren't you showing up? You said you would be here when we were going to win. And Merlin's like, I told you I'd be here when I'd be here type of type of situation. He goes, when you guys win, I'll show up. It's like, it's like,
Complete
wow.
ass, right? Ass.
Yep, most definitely. I have to agree with you. I think they did well and stuck to the archetypes and the mythos of King Arthur and the whole folklore legends behind them. And they merged them well with a sci-fi slant to it. So I think that I totally agree with that. So, Gary, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are you gonna give this? What are you gonna rate this book? or rate this whole maxi series?
Okay, so this again, I'm an unabashed fan of this series. I love this series. I
Hmm.
recommend this series. You know, I like to recommend it to people that aren't necessarily superhero comic fans, right?
Right. Hmm.
Because this is one of my gateway books to give people that think that comics are just about the
Right.
flying around in
Superhero.
tights crowd, right? So I love to give this book. So I think it's very important. And if we're gonna give this on a scale of 1 to 10, like we're gonna
Hmm.
grade a comic,
Yeah.
I'm gonna grade this a 9.4.
Ooh, very nice. Very
9.4.
nice. Okay, very good. Well, I actually we're going to give this one. I want to give this book a 9.0, a solid 9.0, and
It's
this is
still
going
near
to be
mint.
that's still good. That's still
Yeah.
good. And it, I don't know. The '80s for me, it was a time I'm just like I don't know if I would like to relive it. I love the music from the '80s, but I don't know about anything else. So, it's just,
Not the
but
fashion.
not the no. Had
Hmm.
I read this book in the '80s when it had come out, I dare say I would have given it near a 9.6 or a 9.8. Okay, because that's how much I like the series, and that's how much in the '80s this series was.
You know
So
what? Because I did read it in the '80s, I'm I'm
yeah,
I'm bringing it to a 9.6. I'm
Whew.
jumping it because I did read it in the '80s, so that's a great point. And I did love it then. I still love it now. The only thing I find dated is the Cold War stuff
Right.
and the caricatures of the world leaders. So
Yeah.
that's the only thing I find dated about it. Now I will
Agreed.
ask you this: had you ever heard of it before I talked about it?
No, I have never heard of this book until you talked about it,
Okay,
and I
now
was like, I was like, that's it sounded really interesting to me. I like King Arthur mythos to begin with, and you want to throw some sci-fi in there? Sure. Let me see what that's all about. And then I went on eBay and I saw this 12 issue set for less than $10. Less than $10, and it was $10 to ship. So basically, I got this set for $20.
so
You know,
you put your dinero on it. So was that
Mhm.
money well spent for you?
I would say yes. I because I enjoyed the series. Not
Right.
like I said, I give it. I know I enjoyed the series. So yes, that is money well spent for me.
Very good. And so again, this is one that I like to recommend to people that don't necessarily want a superhero book. You know, so it's a go-to. I own this
Mhm.
book in the original books that came out that I bought off at the comic shop.
Right.
I own this in the first trade paperback that was ever collected, and then I
All
have
right.
this great big this deluxe volume that I was showing you that is just fantastic. Probably came out about 5 or 6 years ago. So
Right.
I was kind of surprised they reissued it when there hadn't been
Mhm.
much talk about it in a while. And
Right.
I'll show you something really cool too. Besides the
Oh
dust
yeah.
jacket,
Yeah. Let's see it.
look at
Oh
that,
yeah. Hey,
and
that's pretty awesome. I
the
like that.
Excalibur,
Coming out
yeah,
of the lake.
coming
Coming
out of
out
the
of the lake.
lake.
Mhm.
And if you got to have the lady of the lake, right? So yeah,
Absolutely true.
so somebody's got to bring the blade back.
Yep.
So that so I was really happy to get that. I think it's a well done version. I'm sure you can find this deluxe edition on eBay or whatever. So maybe it's even available on Amazon. I know Ollie's had them for a while and they're really cheap, and I bought
Okay.
a bunch of them to give as gifts out. So and I have done that over the past few years.
Okay.
So
Really
they're out
quick.
there.
Really quick. Where did you meet Mike Barr at to get him to sign that book?
Probably Baltimore.
Okay.
Probably Baltimore Comic Con to get him to sign that. He's signed my trade paperback too that I've had. I have not had the I have not had the
Okay.
pleasure of meeting Brian Boland. Now
Okay.
I would love to get Brian Boland in that. Brian Boland is one of my favorite. He's
Yeah.
a favorite artist of mine. God, his cover work is amazing. And of course, if you ask any Dredd fan, Kurt Comfer, shout out to you. Everybody, that is the Dredd artist
Okay.
for Judge Dredd is Brian Boland. So
Yeah.
that
Definitely.
that's where he made his bones, and that's why one reason why they, when they picked him for this assignment, that Barr knew of him and
Hmm.
knew how great his Dredd work was. So
Nice. Nice. All right. I think we can go ahead and wrap this up. Uncle Gary gives this book a 9.6, or this series a 9.6.
9.6.
I give it a solid 9.0. It's definitely one you should seek out and pick up, especially if you're not into the superhero mythos or archetypes. This is definitely one you want to check out because it's definitely Arthur mythos and sci-fi mixed together. So
Yes.
once again, Camelot 3000, issues 1 through 12. There we go. And that's it. Thank you very
Good
much
stuff.
for checking us out. As always, I am Sal the Slab Guy, and you can always find us on the Codex Station here with Uncle Gary. Could give us a little spiel, Uncle Gary, where they can find you really quick.
All right, I am a proud co-owner of Comic Logic. We are Loudoun County, Virginia's only comic book store. Please come see us. You can catch me every Wednesday, get my weekly fix. You can come see me there. Both of us are heavily a part of the Comic Character of the Day site, founded by our good buddy Archduke Kevy. And
Yep.
I contribute a cover every day. On Facebook, I'm under the name Opie Taylor. Sal's always commenting on it. We've got our good buddy Dan Kelly is doing panels of the day and doing questions of the day. And Archduke Kevy has given us our character of the day. So most all of us here at Codex have some kind of input in that site. So come see Comic Character of the Day. And if you're in Northern Virginia, come see Comic Logic. Come see us there.
Yep. So once again, we're the Codex Station. You can always find us all the socials. Just go ahead and tap at the Codex Station on any streaming platform, and you'll find us. And come check us out. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, and leave us a comment. Tell us what you want to see, what you want to hear. We just had our 1,000-member getaway, and that is just the start, ladies and gentlemen. We're going like crazy. We're going to keep going until we have every single viewer on the planet watching us. Is that right, Gary?
That is right. There's no stopping until everybody is stopping what they're doing and looking at Codex.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And I hope you guys have a 9.8 day.
What he said. This way, that way.
On the other side.
There
you go.
What that guy said.
Take care, Uncle Gary.
See you, brother.